I'll work on pulling up the slides.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So this is a webinar about Bright Futures, which is a Florida-specific scholarship. So if you are not a Florida family, this may not apply. This won't apply to you. So Bright Futures is like a lottery-funded scholarship program for high academic achieving students who plan to or want to stay in state for college or university. So all public universities and colleges accept Bright Futures, and I believe most private schools in Florida also do, but you would need to check with the schools specifically if it's a private school to make sure they accept Bright Futures funding. So there are 3 levels or award levels for Bright Futures. They are called, are you going to share the screen?
I'm ready if you are.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready. So there's the Florida Academic Scholars, commonly known as FAS, and there is the Florida Medallion Scholars, FMS, and then there are the Gold Seal Awards. So the FAS, as you can see on the slide there, scholarship recipients of that receive 100% of their tuition and fees at a Florida school. So that's at a public school or university. So if it's a private school, Bright Futures has like a comparable chart that you would receive a comparable amount of money toward that school, because tuition, per credit hour pricing is different at each school. So then Medallion Scholars receive an award to cover 75% of tuition and fees. So these are the 2 main awards that our home life students receive, pardon me. And these are the ones that we'll be talking about in this webinar. However, if you have an interest in the Gold Seal scholarships, we are happy to help. And you can just email us and we can discuss that privately. The Gold Seal ones are not awards that we have processed often, and we would need to dig a little deeper into each situation. They require very specific courses for those for each student. So you can just email us if you have an interest in that, and we'll work together. My email is Laura, Laura, @homelifeacademy.com, and I'm happy to help you. So the next slide, I'm going to let Crystal tackle.
Right. So this is going to show you, or this slide kind of gives you a presentation of the course table that you're going to see. If you're looking into Bright Futures at all, this is everywhere. So when you get on the Bright Futures website, you're going to be able to see this. If you're digging into it on other people's websites, a lot of times it's there. It's just one of those things that just gives you a really quick breakdown of all the details that you would need to know, especially for the FAS or the FMS scholarships. And just so that you can kind of get a feel for the way it's laid out. It's kind of an unusual table, and when you first glance, it feels a little confusing. But what they're kind of telling you is that all the things through this area are going to be what you need to qualify for the FAS scholarship. All the things in this area are what you're going to need for the FMS. And because this one is all together, the courses are all together, the courses that you need for the FAS or the FMS are going to be the same. They want to see that students are on a college prep path. So it's really important that you take 4 years of English and 4 years of mathematics, and they need to be higher level English and mathematics and natural science, social studies, world language. We're going to dig a little deeper in each of those areas in just a second. But I did want to touch on it and show you the chart at the very least so that you could see the breakdown and how things work. It lays out here. I did want to also point out before I got out of this slide that you can see that right now these numbers are the same for 2020 and 2021, and then for 2021 and 2022. They require that you have an ACT of 29 or an SAT of 1330. And for the 75% scholarship, the FMS, they require an ACT of 25 and an SAT of 1210. But these are subject to change. So if you have a 9th grader or an 8th grader and you're just really ahead of the game and you're looking ahead and planning, we're really glad you're doing that. We want you to keep doing that. But these can change year by year, and it's up to the Bright Futures decision team or the Florida Department of Education what they shift it to. And I have seen those change since I have been working here. So just be aware that they can shift from the time that you start looking at it your freshman year until your child is a senior. So you'll want to keep updated just in case things shift and you need to have higher scores. So let's get a little bit deeper into the high school core course credits that we were talking about a second ago. The requirements are 4 credits of English, 4 credits of mathematics, 3 credits of natural science, 3 credits of social studies, and 2 credits of world language. It's not saying that you won't have to do the other requirements of electives or personal finance or PE, some of the ones that we required HLA. You'll still have to meet HLA graduation requirements if you're with us. But for Bright Futures specifically, they care the most about these 16 core courses. When we look at the English courses, I do want to note that one of the most important parts is that at least 3 of the credits need to have substantial writing. HLA does require that you do literature and composition if you're going to call it an English course, but Bright Futures wants to see that they did substantial writing. So you'll want to tell us when you enter your students' courses, you're going to want to make sure that you include information about that so that we can verify that there has been substantial writing, whatever curriculum or resources or outline that you might cover for the school year. Share that with us in your Apple Core account. When it comes to mathematics, this one gets people sometimes because the requirement for Bright Futures is that you must take Algebra 1 or higher. Sometimes I've run into some problems with families who are starting at pre-algebra and they didn't realize. And so then they're scrambling to try to get an extra math course. Sometimes we run into a family who split algebra over 2 years, and that can't count that counts as a full credit instead of 2 full credits. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you're checking into your math courses and making sure that they're a college prep math when you move forward. For natural science, there are lots of great things. I know some students don't love the traditional sciences and might choose forensic science or oceanography or things like that. And many of those are listed in the Bright Futures course table and are able to be counted. But you just want to make sure if you're unsure about a science course being counted, you can definitely reach out to Laura. Or I guess, and you want to make sure at least 2 of your science courses include a substantial lab. Same thing as the substantial writing for English. You'll just need to include that in your resources or your list in Apple Core so that we can make sure that your student has taken a lab in at least 2 of the science courses they took. Then social studies, 1 credit is required to be US history, but those are HLA requirements. That's not specific to Bright Futures. We highly recommend US government and economics because many colleges and universities require those, but there isn't specific requirements for Bright Futures on this category. They just want to see that you've completed 3 credits of social studies. And so they're willing to be flexible. It's just, if you're going to follow HLA guidelines, you'll want to make sure that 1 of those credits is US history, and you'll want to check with the school that you're hoping to attend to make sure that they don't require US government and economics if you're going to choose not to take those courses. Then the final courses that you'll have to make sure that you want to cover are 2 credits of a world language, and they need to be in sequential order and within the same language. It's not saying that doing multiple languages isn't great. They just want to see that you're digging deeper. And so in this case, I did want to note that most of the typical languages that you are expecting to be on there are approved, but American Sign Language is also considered a world language and meets the Florida Bright Futures requirements. All right. The ACT and SAT scores, we talked a little bit about those already. You can see what they're listed for this school year as well as next school year. They are the same currently. But from last year to this year, they did increase a little bit. So again, make sure that you're always checking in. One thing I want to note about the SAT and the ACT scores, they do look at your composite score, your super score is kind of what they call it, where if you've taken the test multiple times, you don't have to score the highest on a single test. You could score the highest in one area and then on another test, a higher score in another area, and they will combine them to count. One really important note, I'm skipping a little bit, but this is important to note a few times. You'll need to make sure that the scores are being sent to one of the 12 Florida state universities. They are a part of the Florida Department of Education portal. And so when you send the scores to those universities, they get automatically uploaded for the sake of Bright Futures. If we were, you can send those to us. We definitely want to have them. We're happy to put them on your file, but if I upload them, they won't count. It only counts if if one of the Florida universities has uploaded them into the Florida Department of Education site. So that's one that a lot of people don't catch. If you've missed it, if you've already taken a test and you know it needs to be uploaded, but you didn't ask for it to be sent to one of those universities, you are welcome to call either SAT or ACT and ask them to send those scores. I believe both of them ask for a small fee in that case, but you can still get them sent. It's not too late is what I would want to let you know. You can take as many exams as you want. In fact, Bright Futures encourages you to. They would love to see you qualify. They're hoping they can help their students succeed. So they are happy to have as many tests as you can. So maybe you try the first time and you don't qualify. So you try again and this time you get the FMS award. You know, if you still have time, feel free to go and take one more test and see if you might qualify for that FAS award. You definitely don't want to miss out if it was just a matter of test score. The last thing about test scores and entry is that you want to make sure that you are taking the test before June 30th, if it's a typical entry, or before January 31st, if you're a mid-year graduate. If the scores come in after that, it's fine. It's no big deal. They will accept the scores after that, but you have to have taken the exam before those dates if they're going to count the scores towards your submission, towards your Bright Futures application. Okay, and we talked a second ago about those 12 state universities. Just in case you don't know automatically what they are, here is a list. And you can send them to any of these schools. It doesn't mean your student has to attend these schools. Most of the people that I've worked with in the past do not attend the schools that they ship their scores to. They just understand that they have to be uploaded that way. So this gives you a list. You can do a Google search as well and just type in, 12 state universities in Florida, and this list will pop up in multiple different formats. And then let's see here. So at this point in the year, if you haven't taken that test, when you enroll for the test, make sure you choose one of these schools to send them to. If you've already taken the test and you're worried about it, just contact ACT or SAT and ask them to send the scores to one of these schools.
You can also do that after the fact. I did that for my son. I hadn't sent the scores to one of the 12 universities, and I just logged into his College Board account and had it sent. There was a fee. I think it was $20-ish or something like that. I think so. You don't necessarily have to call, but you can do it online as well. So, okay, so let's talk about the community service hours. This can be a snag for people who, start thinking about Bright Futures kind of late in their high school career. So you kind of want to start early thinking about this. It just has to be over the course of 4 years. So if you're going for the top scholarship, you're going to need 100 volunteer hours. So that can be 25 a year. That can be, 100 in 1 year, which might not be advisable, but possible. You can break that up any way you want. So for volunteer hours, students cannot receive a credit or payment. So it does need to be a service in the community. And it can be to, a nonprofit. It can be through a church. However, it shouldn't be just for like you know, one specific person in the church. It should be part of a program. It shouldn't be like, you know, I babysat for my pastor's kids or something like that. It needs to be part of a greater community effort. If you're not sure about something, you can just email me and I'd be happy to talk through that and approve it or not approve it. So no academic credit. So these are not things you want to put in Apple Core listed for credit. You can put it in the portfolio section just to keep track of it. However, I advise keeping track of volunteer hours as you go, so you don't get to your senior year and have to go back to every person and ask for a signature on something to get it approved and figure out how many hours you have. So anytime your student is doing a community service, it's great to get something from the organization on their letterhead is preferred, just saying like, you know, so-and-so served in this manner on this date and for this many hours, and a signature from someone in that organization. If you can't get it on letterhead, we do have a log sheet available on our website now, and you can download that and you can use a log sheet per organization. So just use a different one for each organization. There are several logs. If you skip to the next slide for me, I slipped that in this morning. So you can use the same sheet for the organization for as many slots as you can fill. Just use a separate one if it's for a different organization. So we advise starting this in 9th grade. You can start logging hours. Can you go back to the volunteer hours one?
There you go.
Thanks. You can start logging hours this summer after you finish 8th grade. Those will count. And all your hours must be finished before you graduate. So most seniors are pretty busy and have already served many hours by the end of the fall semester of their senior year. So, I mean, I don't think we've seen anyone scrambling for volunteer hours.
The only year that they did seem to be was because of the COVID situation. So I would encourage you, like Laura said, to start sooner. The kids who had been doing it the whole time were not in panic mode. The ones who had just decided at the last minute that they were going to try for this award were definitely asking all the time, is it looking like they're going to change the hours and things like that. So you just never know what might come up. I don't think anyone was predicting this year. So it's always good to plan ahead.
Yeah, and I know I've seen some chatter on Facebook about, you know, where can kids serve right now? There's not as many opportunities because of COVID. I did hear of like a letter writing opportunity, students writing letters to shut-ins or people in nursing homes. I think you can just Google that and find some opportunities for that. That's a great opportunity. There's also pet care, like what's it called, through a charity. Like if you're, what's it called? Not adopting a pet, but you're just keeping care of one.
Oh, like fostering.
Fostering, thank you. Yeah, fostering a pet, that counts as long as it's through an organization in your community that can sign off on that and keep track of hours. So that's, you know, not going to work for every family, but it will work for some. So there are still some opportunities available in like my community. Food pantries still have people, you know, you just have to have proper mask and stuff. There are some other organizations like
in our town, some of the libraries they're still accepting students.
Yes.
When the library is not open, or when it's not open to the public. I think even some of the government type organizations accept interns for different things. I think your best bet is to just ask. If you are unsure, ask us. If you are unsure if an organization is willing, I think a lot of times people are nervous to ask, but don't be nervous. Just check. The worst that they can tell you is no, we don't need any volunteers right now. But most organizations are going to be glad to have your help, especially with COVID and this strange year.
Yeah. So that's it. If you have specific questions, you can, again, just email me, laura@homelifeacademy.com, and I'm happy to work through that. So the log sheet on the next page, that is on our website. When you go to the Florida scholarships section, it talks about Bright Futures, and that's a resource you'll want to check out. And the log sheet is in there, I think step number 2. You can download it. Okay, what's next? So let's just talk about the steps for applying. You have to submit the Florida Financial Aid application, the FFAA. That is done on the Bright Futures website. At the end of this, we have that link, and I can email these slides to anyone who's interested. So the Florida Financial Aid application is not difficult. It's not as involved as like FAFSA. It's pretty simple. So you just do that on the Bright Futures website. That is step 1 to initiating this process, because until you're in their system, we really can't do anything on our end. So you need to do that, and you need to email us your volunteer hours, either the log sheet or the letterhead from the organization. And you can email those along the way if you want us to keep them in your student's file, or you can wait until the end and just email them all in one attachment. And then you need to make sure you've got the SAT or ACT scores sent to one of the universities. That is a step that people often forget. So, just keep that in mind when you're signing up. And then you need to pay the Home Life Bright Futures processing fee. You can do that by going into into your Home Life account and creating a request for Bright Futures. So there is a small fee, $25 if you do it before March 1st. And we recommend doing it in that, right after, when does it open? December 1st?
Yeah, December 1st or December 31st. It was December.
Yes. So in December, the Bright Futures website opens and you can do your Florida Financial Aid application. And then you can start, sending us the things and processing your fee, paying your fee. And then, if you're running late, like I was with my senior last year, you can pay extra and get a rush on that. It's no problem. We understand. So, and then you want to request, after you pay the fee, you can request a Bright Futures transcript review and submission. And you can do that just by emailing me, or you can make a request online for a transcript review and put Bright Futures in the notes. Either way is fine. And along the way, we're happy to answer questions if you're unsure, or, whatever, you forgot the timeline, the fee cost, just email us. Laura@homelifeacademy.com. Crystal is also happy to answer you, but we're trying to funnel everything through one person right now. So Crystal's very busy with some other things, but she definitely knows this as well. So I think that's it. Here are the links.
I guess we'll click over to ours, especially just so they can kind of see what it's going to look like. So this is going to take you, this link takes you here, but if you search on our website, just search Florida scholarships, and it will take you to an area where you can learn more about Bright Futures. This is just going to give you some information, and most of the things that we covered today are listed right on the website. So if you forget things that we mentioned and are interested in coming back, and you don't want to reach out, you just want a quick answer, this is a good place to start. The next one, let me get back over here so I can click it. The next one is the Bright Future Student Handbook. This is another great place to go if you're interested in just getting more information directly about Bright Futures. It's a little bit slow to load. It looks like the pictures aren't popping up, but you can see that they have a lot of links. The area that I would suggest that you might check out would be right down here. There are 3 different links that will take you to a quick fact sheet about each of the scholarships that they offer. So again, if you have questions, those quick fact sheets will give you the information that you would need about core courses, about the scholarship amounts, about volunteer requirements, test score requirements, all those kinds of requirements basically. And so that's a good place to go to quickly get everything that you might need. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we can answer questions, unless you have anything else you wanted from that, Laura.
No, I think we covered everything, but we can look at the questions.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to start and why don't I just read them and then we'll just take turns? Like okay. Okay, so here's the first question. My daughter has been playing piano for our church for the last 2 years. Can they use that?
Can you email me, Holly, and I'll check with Bright Futures about that. And we can just talk about what kind of service that was. So Laura at homelifeacademy.com. That would be great.
Do you need to sign up for the FAFSA in your junior year, or do you wait until your senior year?
So FAFSA is different than what we're talking about for Bright Futures. So FAFSA is the federal aid application for financial aid. You need to do that in your senior year. And the Bright Futures one, you also need to do in your senior year if you're applying for Bright Futures. That opens December 1st. So you need to Google FAFSA, and then you also need to look at the FFAA. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bright Futures. So there's 2 different things we're talking about.
And if you're interested in federal aid, you'll need to end up doing both. If you're interested in Bright Futures and federal aid, then you'll need to fill out both of them. And I believe both can be done your senior year. I think that's the year that you do both of them.
And we do have information on our website for filling out the FAFSA. If that's a concern of yours, I know that it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. And one of our other counselors mentioned that if you just Google that, there are some great YouTube tutorials about FAFSA. The one for Bright Futures, though, is not very in-depth or complicated.
Mm-hmm. The next question is, do we apply the year that they graduate or the year before they graduate? I can grab that one if you need. Yeah. You're gonna apply in your student's senior year. So and it's the year they graduate, in the sense that if they plan to graduate in 3 years, you'll need to apply that year. If they plan to graduate in 5 years, they're going to apply in their 5th year. So you want to make sure a typical student would be going in 4 years, and they would apply and do all of the check mark all the boxes for Bright Futures requirements within their senior year. But again, like we discussed, you'll want to make sure you're volunteering sooner than that. And you'll want to make sure you're choosing courses that meet the requirements starting it in 9th grade. Let's see. Okay, so for volunteer hours, if we live out of the country, can our organization and other organizations here in Honduras count as volunteer opportunities?
Yes, that probably is not an issue. I'm assuming you're a Florida resident, but you're living outside of the country. Yes, that's fine. And you can email me with specifics and we'll just, confirm that.
Okay, can I combine NCSA and Bright Futures? I think probably our best bet on that one is we'll need to dig a little deeper. So if you can email Laura directly, that would help us look into that further.
My guess is yes. Usually Bright Futures doesn't affect any other scholarships in Florida. Like it doesn't affect prepaid plans either or other scholarships. And typically, if you have another scholarship first, like you would use that, and then your Bright Futures money would stay in your account because it can roll over for quite a while. You can use it You know, it just stays in your account for the whole time you're in college. I think even longer, like if you continue on. So my guess is it doesn't affect it in any way, but you can email us and we'll be happy to check on it.
Does Bright Futures allow for online schools in Florida as well, like remote learning? They do allow for that, but you would most likely, if you're doing remote learning through your school, if you have a friend doing that, then they will go through their school to qualify for Bright Futures. So if you are a student of Home Life Academy, you're going to work with us. If you are a public school student but doing remote learning, then you're going to work with your school to enter all the information that they would need and to work with them, making sure that you've followed all the requirements. The public and private schools usually have very similar requirements, but independent homeschoolers have different requirements. So you'll want to make sure that you're working directly with your school to make sure you're meeting all of the Bright Futures requirements. Can we get copies of the slides? Yes, if you are interested in copies of the slides, just reach out to Laura directly and she can email you the slides so that you can have those and you can have all the links that you would need. Is a college dual enrolled intermediate algebra class considered a high level math that counts toward the 4 math classes required? It is. Yeah. I didn't know if you want to jump in or if I did. Yes, any sort of dual enrollment class that is higher level math like that is almost always approved. So if you took algebra when you were younger and then took college algebra, they would both count as separate full credit courses. If you ever have questions about what might count or what might not dual enrollment wise, again, always reach out to Laura. She's happy to look into it for you. There is a course table on the Bright Futures website, so you can search it yourself and you can use the numbers that you're listing here. Sometimes they'll pop up, sometimes they won't, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be approved. So if you're not sure, always reach out to Laura. We're happy to help. Okay, is Bright Futures only for public universities?
So no, they have a comparable chart for funding for private schools as well. Not all private schools accept Bright Futures, so you have to check with the school. Since they're not public, they're not required to take it. Most do. That's a good thing to do, but I can see cases where they wouldn't. So you need to check with the school in Florida. So yeah, but yes, most do.
Okay, looks like we might have another question. Let me pull it over here. Are there any Florida colleges that do not accept Bright Futures, and does getting an associate's degree while in high school affect the scholarship?
So again, all the public schools, Florida colleges and universities accept Bright Futures. For a private institution, you need to check with them. Getting an associate's degree while in high school does not affect Bright Futures. You still qualify. If you qualify for Bright Futures money funding, you still get it. And then you can use that for a bachelor's degree or graduate school kind of thing. It just, the money stays with your student. Mm-hmm. And if there's extra money, like if you know the tuition and fees didn't add up to everything that the cost, you had extra money, students can use that money toward other things like housing and books and expenses. It's a really great opportunity.
And again, they really want you to qualify. They're definitely not trying to keep the money away from you. So don't be discouraged. If it looks like, oh, your students' first test scores weren't great, go ahead and be following the Bright Futures plan, because you can always increase your scores. There's lots of ways. You can do an ACT or SAT prep course. There are lots of resources online, and even the Bright Futures reps that we work with are always encouraging. If somebody's got a 75% scholarship, they're always, they're really close, encourage them that they could try to take that test again. There's time. So I just want you to know that it sometimes can be intimidating, especially in a scholarship that's as great as this. It's a really excellent opportunity for Florida students. And so I would just encourage all families to be thinking, we're going to try for it. Because again, they're hoping that they can get as many kids as they can to qualify and help them, you know, enter college and get a higher level degree.
And I know we didn't talk about the Gold Seal scholarships in this webinar, but if you're concerned that, you know, your student doesn't have the test scores for that, or maybe you have a student, a child looking to go to a technical or trade school, you know, they have a very specific vocation in mind, then you want to look at the Gold Seal scholarships. They are great. They're perfect for like applied technology, you know, technical degrees. You can get associates in science degrees. So you can go to two-year universities and colleges and get AAs on the GSV. The funding is not as much, but the requirements and qualifications are also not as steep or as difficult. So it is something, you know, if they don't have the ACT or SAT scores, you know, look at the GSV and the GSC as well. They are also great opportunities to get some of your college paid for. Anything else? That's all the questions?
Yeah, I don't see any others. Let me check really quick. Looks like everybody has asked the questions they have. If there is any other questions that you just didn't want to ask on the webinar, that's okay. Sometimes I'm kind of shy too. So we would be happy to answer them over email, or you can always call. Either one of us are available. So if for some reason Laura is out, you know, you're always welcome to reach out to me. But again, we're mostly funneling things that are Florida towards Laura, since she's our Florida expert. But you can get the slides if you'd like them. You'll just need to reach out to Laura. And if there is any, oh, we had one ask the question. Laura's email is Laura, Laura, at homelifeacademy.com. And I think it's in the slides as well. So if you wanted the slides, we can send you the slides and it will have her email and address on it.
And this will be recorded and posted on our Facebook Florida Connect group. So you can also review this video there or send it to a friend or, you know, bookmark it for later. If you're not part of that group, you might want to join that. If you're on Facebook, it's the Florida Connect group. And you can get to it through our main Facebook page and then go to groups. Well, it was lovely having you all today. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
And that's it. Thanks.
Have a great day.